I found my ex living on the streets, and the truth he told me made me cry. Can you imagine finding someone you once loved, someone you shared so much with, living on the streets? And then, to hear a story from their own mouth that shatters everything you thought you knew, leaving you in tears, questioning everything you've ever believed about life, love, and second chances. That's exactly what happened to me, and I'm still reeling from it. Was I wrong for how I reacted, or would you have done the same thing? Tell me if you would have done the same thing. It all started innocently enough, as most faltering events tend to. My name is Sarah, and for 5 glorious, tumultuous years, David was my world. We met in college, a classic tale of 2 starry-eyed optimists navigating the confusing labyrinth of academia and burgeoning adulthood. He was charming, witty, with a laugh that could light up a room and eyes that always seemed to hold a secret, mischievous sparkle. I, a shy art history major, was utterly captivated. Our relationship blossomed quickly, a whirlwind of late-night study sessions, cheap pizza, road trips in his beat-up sedan, and dreams whispered under a blanket of stars. We talked about everything: our futures, our fears, the ridiculous names we'd give our hypothetical children. He was my rock, my confidant, my best friend, and the love of my life. I genuinely believed we were destined for forever. We even had a little ritual. Every year on our anniversary, we'd write down a wish for our future together on a small piece of paper, fold it, and tuck it into a special wooden box he'd carved himself. It was a silly, sweet tradition, a testament to our unwavering belief in our shared future. I still have that box, by the way, sitting on my dresser, collecting dust and memories. After graduation, we moved in together, excited to start our real lives. We found a small, cozy apartment in the city, just big enough for us and our overflowing collection of books and art supplies. He got a job in marketing, and I started working at a local gallery. Things weren't always perfect, of course. We had our share of arguments, mostly over trivial things like whose turn it was to do the dishes or my perpetually messy art corner. But we always found our way back to each other, stronger and more in love. We talked about marriage, about buying a house with a big garden, about adopting a stray dog. The future was bright, or so I thought. Then, slowly, subtly, things began to change. It started with small things. He became more withdrawn, less communicative. The spark in his eyes seemed to dim, replaced by a distant, almost haunted look. He started working longer hours, sometimes not coming home until the early hours of the morning, always with a vague excuse about a demanding project or an unexpected client meeting. I tried to talk to him, to get him to open up, but he'd just brush me off, saying he was stressed and overwhelmed. I felt a growing knot of anxiety in my stomach, a cold dread that something was terribly wrong. I'd try to hug him, to comfort him, and he'd stiffen, pulling away. He stopped laughing as much. The silly jokes we used to share just hung in the air, unacknowledged. The light had gone out of him, and with it, a part of me felt like it was going out too. I started to question if I was doing something wrong. Was I not supportive enough? Was I too clingy? I racked my brain, replaying every interaction, searching for a flaw in myself, a reason for his sudden detachment. One evening, after he'd been particularly distant for weeks, I finally confronted him. I remember standing in our tiny living room, the city lights twinkling outside our window, casting long shadows across the floor. My voice trembled as I asked him, "David, what's going on? You're not yourself. Are you having an affair?" The words felt like acid on my tongue, but I had to know. He stared at me for a long moment, his face unreadable, and then, With a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, he confessed. He wasn't having an affair. It was something far worse, something I never, in my wildest dreams, would have expected. He had a gambling problem, a serious one. He'd been secretly betting away our savings, accumulating massive debts, and borrowing money from increasingly shady sources. He told me he'd lost everything, even the money we'd saved for a down payment on a house, money my parents had given us. My world imploded. The man I loved, the man I trusted implicitly, had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was a betrayal of our shared future, our dreams, our trust. I felt a surge of anger so intense it almost choked me, quickly followed by a wave of crushing heartbreak. I screamed, I cried, I begged him to explain why, how he could have done this to us. He just stood there, shoulders slumped, tears silently streaming down his face, a broken man. He promised he would get help, that he would change, that he would pay back every penny. But the trust was gone. The foundation of our relationship had crumbled into dust. I couldn't look at him without seeing the lies, the secrets, the destruction he had wrought. After a few agonizing weeks of trying to make it work, trying to rebuild something that felt irreparably shattered, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left him. I packed a suitcase, called a friend, and walked out of that apartment, leaving behind 5 years of memories, 5 years of hopes and dreams, and a broken heart that felt like it would never heal. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The following months were a blur of grief and anger. I moved into a small studio apartment, threw myself into my work, and tried to forget. I blocked his number, unfriended him on social media, and avoided any place we might have frequented together. It was painful, isolating, but I knew it was necessary for my own healing. I heard snippets of information through mutual friends. He'd lost his job. He was still struggling. He'd moved out of our old apartment. I tried to compartmentalize it, to put him in a box labeled past, and never open it again. I dated a bit, but no one ever measured up to the idealized version of David I still carried in my heart, the David who existed before the gambling addiction consumed him. The pain slowly dulled, transforming into a dull ache, a scar on my soul. Life moved on. I got a promotion at the gallery, made new friends, and even adopted a grumpy but lovable cat named Muffin. I was building a new life, a life without David, a life that was finally starting to feel stable and happy. I convinced myself that I was over him, that he was a closed chapter in my life. I convinced myself that I had moved on completely. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have tried to reach out? Would you have stayed away forever? What would your instincts have told you to do? Then, last Tuesday, everything changed again. I was walking home from work, taking a shortcut through the park, lost in thought, when I saw him. Or rather, I saw a man huddled on a park bench, his face obscured by a grimy baseball cap, his clothes tattered and dirty. My heart lurched. There was something familiar about the slump of his shoulders, the way he held his hands. I hesitated, my mind racing, telling myself it couldn't be him. But something, a gut feeling, a twist of fate, urged me closer. As I got nearer, he lifted his head and our eyes met. It was David, but not the David I remembered. This David was gaunt, his once bright eyes dull and bloodshot, his face etched with lines of hardship and despair. He looked years older than he was, a ghost of the vibrant man I had loved. A gasp escaped my lips, and he flinched, as if caught doing something shameful. My meticulously constructed wall of indifference crumbled instantly. All the old feelings, the love, the anger, the heartbreak rushed back, a torrent of emotions overwhelming me. I couldn't speak. He just stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite decipher. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "David," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. I sat down next to him on the cold bench, the silence between us heavy with unspoken history. The park, usually bustling, seemed eerily quiet. I didn't know what to say, what to do. My mind was a whirlwind of questions. How had it come to this? What had happened to him? Finally, he broke the silence. He started talking, his voice a low monotone, recounting a story that chilled me to the bone. After I left, he said, his gambling addiction spiraled even further out of control. He lost his job, then his apartment. He tried to get help. He truly did. But the addiction had him in an iron grip. He had burned bridges with everyone he knew, his family refusing to help him until he truly hit rock bottom, which, apparently, he had. He had been living on the streets for months, scrounging for food, sleeping in abandoned buildings, battling the elements and his own demons. It was a harrowing tale, filled with desperation and regret. But then he revealed something else, something that made my blood run cold. He told me about why he started gambling in the first place. He said it wasn't just a sudden impulse, a weakness of character. He had been working on a massive marketing campaign, a high-stakes project for a very important client. He was under immense pressure, and his boss, a notoriously ruthless man, had made it clear that failure was not an option. One evening, he discovered a crucial error in their data analysis, an error that would have completely derailed the campaign and cost the company millions. He tried to tell his boss, but his boss, consumed by the desire for success, refused to listen, dismissing his concerns as minor. David knew if the campaign went live with that error, he would be blamed, his career would be over, and his reputation would be ruined. He was terrified. In a moment of sheer panic and desperation, he saw an opportunity. He saw an online poker game, and he had a brilliant idea, fueled by fear and a twisted sense of logic. He thought if he could just win enough money, he could discreetly fix the error, pay for the new data, and prevent the disaster, all without anyone knowing. He convinced himself it was a temporary fix, a means to an end. But as we all know, addiction doesn't work that way. He won at first, a small amount, which only fueled his delusion. Then he started losing, chasing his losses, convinced the next bet would be the one that saved him. He became trapped in a vicious cycle, digging himself deeper and deeper into a hole of debt and deceit. The secret became a monstrous burden, consuming him, driving him away from me, from everything he loved. He said he had tried to tell me countless times, but shame and fear held him captive. He was afraid I would leave him, that I would judge him, that I would never understand. And in the end, his fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy. As he spoke, tears welled up in his eyes, silent and endless. And then I started to cry too, not just for him, but for the lost years, for the shattered dreams, for the innocence we had both lost. I cried for the vibrant, hopeful young man he once was, and for the broken man sitting beside me. The truth he told me was horrifying, tragic, and utterly heartbreaking. It wasn't an excuse for his actions, not entirely, but it offered a glimpse into the immense pressure and fear that had driven him to such destructive behavior. It didn't erase the pain he had caused me, but it added a layer of profound sadness to the anger I had held on to for so long. We sat there for a long time, just crying, the unspoken past mingling with the harsh present. After the tears subsided, a quiet understanding settled between us. I asked him if he had eaten, and he shook his head, looking away in shame. I took him to a small diner nearby, and he ate ravenously, as if it was his last meal. We talked more, not about the past, but about the present, about what he needed. He admitted he was tired, exhausted, and desperately wanted to get help, but he didn't know where to start. He said he was ready to face his demons, to truly commit to recovery. Something in his eyes, a flicker of that old spark, made me believe him. I knew I couldn't forget the pain he had caused, but I also couldn't abandon him now. He was a human being, suffering, and he was the man I had loved. I made a decision, a difficult one, but one that felt right in my heart. I told him I would help him find a shelter, a place where he could get a hot meal, a shower, and a clean bed. I told him I would help him research treatment programs for his addiction. I wouldn't take him back into my life in the same way, not yet, maybe never. The trust was too broken, the wounds too deep, but I couldn't leave him to rot on the streets. He was still David, and he deserved a chance at redemption. The road ahead would be long and arduous for both of us. There would be no quick fixes, no magical solutions. But as I walked him to a nearby shelter, leaving him at the entrance with a promise to check in on him, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the happy ending I had once envisioned for us, but it was a beginning of healing, of forgiveness, of a different kind of connection. So, that's my story. It's messy, complicated, and far from over. I'm still figuring out what it all means, and what my role in David's life will be moving forward. It's a stark reminder that life is rarely black and white, and that sometimes the truth can be more painful and more complex than any lie. Like this video if you were on my side, if you think I made the right decision in helping him. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.